And we are back. Yes, we're back again. It's been a long 2 weeks, but Just Enough is ready to get back to doing what we do, provide help, hope, and healing. First of all, I want to wish everybody, I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year. We're looking forward to great things happening here at Just Enough. We have an outstanding lineup for January and February, so we're going to get right into what it is that we do. But first, I want to do a couple of housekeeping things. I want to thank Michelle Jackson and Minister Michael Moore, two previous guests here on Just Enough, and they were generous enough to support Just Enough through in-kind donations, and I really appreciate that. We here want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We thank God for you, and feel free to contact me if you would like to make a donation yourself. If you like what we're doing, it's beneficial to you, please reach out and do what you can to help us. I would be remiss if I did not talk briefly about the events of yesterday. We all know that there was, I call it, I'm going to be Rick for a minute, it was an act of terrorism on our soil. There was an attempted coup, let's put it point blank. And if that had been the people of color that look like us, there would have been bloodshed all over the Capitol steps. So be not fooled, but at the same time, thank God that we're in a place where we don't have to respond to that in a negative fashion. Let's think about what our responses are going to be. Yeah, the Bible tells us, be angry, but sin not. So let's keep that in mind as we move forward in our own personal process of healing. Myself, I was angry, I was confused, I was really distraught for a moment. I thought, you know what, let's grab the strap and let's go. But that's not the way to respond to things. And the way that you have to respond is by consulting God first before you formulate any answers, because God is not an impulsive God. He is going to give you the time to feel what you felt, just like you don't think Jesus was angry when he hung on that cross. So you have to consider, you know what, okay, I'm angry, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to respond in a fashion that represents who I am today in Christ. For those of you who aren't in Christ, come on and join us. Give me a holler. We can fix that too. This evening, we have a special guest. We're going to be dealing with grief and loss. And our guest is the pastor, Jamila Woods. Jamila is a native of New Jersey. I can't pronounce that city name, but I know it's close to Camden. That's where my folks are. Shout out to my people in Camden. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a Master of Divinity degree. She's also has a Master's in Social Work from the University of Maryland. She currently serves, Jamila is in everything, y'all. She currently serves as the pastor of the J-Bass Christian Community Church in White Plains, Maryland, and that's been since 2012. She was previously the pastor of Cornerstone AME Church in La Plata for 6 years. But she also, I believe that she'll second this, she launched Gabriel's Lyric Therapeutic Services in July of 2014, and I know she's really proud of that agency, and she's going to tell you a little bit about that as well. But this organization offers therapeutic services, resources, support, information, and training around mental health. She's a licensed social worker, certified domestic violence assessor, certified anger management specialist, a certified mental health first aid instructor, and I got to talk to you about that because I got somebody I want you to get with, a domestic violence counselor, and a grief and loss counselor. Like I said, Jamila does it all. Jamila also sings very well. She's an accomplished singer. She has recorded 2 CDs and has traveled throughout the United States, including Hawaii, South Africa, Haiti, the Caribbean, Turkey. She's been sharing her music, preaching, and or utilizing her teaching gifts. She is a gifted preacher, teacher. Trust me, I've been beat up by several of her sermons, of which I remember every one of them, because they left scars. But by his stripes, we are also healed. But I want you all to meet Pastor Jamila Woods. Jamila?
Well, good evening, good evening, good evening. And first and foremost, let me thank you, Rick Davis Jr. God bless you for this wonderful opportunity to be here. And for those of you who have taken the time to tune in today to WBGR Just Enough broadcast. We're really excited for this opportunity, and we hope that we'll drop some information that will be a blessing to you, and certainly will give you some clarification as it relates to grief and loss, and maybe even provide some answers to some questions or some direction if that's what's needed.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Jamila. We really right now, in dealing with the pandemic situation, there has been numerous, we hear every day, we are bombarded with news of death, and destruction. We get images of people in the hospitals on ventilators, enclosed in what they would call a bubble. We see the images of cemeteries where bodies are stacked up. We can't go to funerals. We see the images of outside of hospitals where there are trailers, cool trailers where they're stacking bodies. And this taps on two things. It taps on the grieving process as well as loss. But then what we also have is people still continuing to die from natural causes. People are losing jobs. Relationships are being fractured because now we got to stay home and we figuring out that we don't like our mate. We can't get to the side piece. Yeah, I said side piece. And it gets frustrating. So yes, I did say side piece. So it gets a little crazy. But what I want to ask you first and foremost, what made you specialize in grief and loss?
So per se, I didn't specialize particularly in grief and loss. My desire is to provide holistic services. And so needless to say, grief and loss are a part of the holistic process, because the reality, and you actually touched on it, is that grief and loss is not just about death and dying. Mm-hmm. Grief and loss has a lot to do with the loss of relationships, as you just said, the loss of employment. Mm-hmm. I mean, people grieve the loss of a pet, and some people don't take that very seriously, but that can be a very serious challenge for some people and have a very serious impact. So the whole idea of grief and loss evolves around the pain that we experience from something that we have been used to, being connected to, something that we have loved, something that's become a part of us. And so for me, it was only natural to make grief and loss a part of that therapeutic process, because one thing is for certain and two things are for sure. All of us will go through a period in our lives of grief and loss, whether it be from a death or be from something else. And unfortunately, Rick, some people make the mistake of thinking that you can put a hierarchy on the level of pain you experience depending upon the type of loss, i.e. death. Some people think would make a person grieve more than a person who loses their job, when that's not necessarily the truth. Right? Or death would be higher than someone who ends a relationship that was very important to them. And so, as well as I do from the work that we've done together, that depending upon the level of pain a person experiences, and that's unique to the individual. So we can't make that something that we say, oh, well, you should be here because your situation is here and you should be here because there's a saying that says your perception is your reality. Right. And so it's important. And I think for me, the whole issue of grief and loss, because I've had so many people come to me that were dealing with loss and dealing with grief, and all of it didn't have to do with a death.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you said that, because sometimes we put things in a box. We like to put things in a box. We like to keep it, well, I'm hurting worse than you because I lost this and you didn't lose that. But it varies from person to person. Let me ask you this. So what does it look like when somebody's grieving, actually? Even if you don't see it, if you can't see somebody crying, say for instance, what other things could somebody look for?
Well, some of the things that you can look for are some of the signs, some of the same things we talk about when we talk about depression. When you see people who become isolated, who are not beginning to enjoy activities that they previously enjoyed. You know that there's an activity that somebody really enjoyed doing, and all of a sudden now they just absolutely positively are not doing, and it's not because they found something else to do, right? Or you find that person who's not eating as much, or maybe they're eating more. You said crying, but definitely when you see a person who's crying, or just a person who appears down and isolating themselves, there are so many faces to grief. And so I want to say this because, when we talk about depression and even when we talk about grief, a common misconception is that if you see a person that appears to be really happy, they're really happy, that really happy could be grief also.
Oh, wow.
And that really happy or those risky behaviors, or, you understand what I'm saying? Some people do things to mask their pain or to, as you know, to medicate their pain. And medicating that pain doesn't always have to be illicit drugs, right? It can be promiscuity. It can be those risky behaviors. And so when we think about grief and loss, what you really want to look for are the unusual behaviors. When you see a person who you're used to seeing in one way, and now they're not the same person anymore. They may not be the same person in their physical appearance, but they may not be the same person in their, you understand what I'm saying? In their countenance, in their emotional responses to things. And so, it's so important, and especially now, especially during this pandemic, and you talked about it, not just during this pandemic, but during this time when so many things are going on in our country. We had this pandemic, 2020, we had the Black Lives Matter movement, we saw deaths of African Americans at the hands of people that were absolutely unjust, and here we roll right into 2021, and as you said, we see this insurrection at the White House. Guess what? That's caused some grief and loss. Just what happened last night, and not just from the 4 people who lost their lives. Rick, I was in tears, man. It hurt me to my heart to see our country in the place and the space that we were last night, especially on the backdrop of all that has taken place in 2020. And so it's so important, even for people like you and me, who do this work, to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, to make sure that we are healthy and whole. And so again, to answer your question, you want to look for those staunch differences in people, differences in behaviors, differences in mindsets, differences in language. And listen, we have to learn how to listen.
I think we run into problems because we get uncomfortable with grief, and we're fixers naturally. So when somebody's crying, it's like we gotta say something, we gotta do something, and sometimes you don't need to do anything at all. When I've done groups and people start to cry about, when they start to think about where they've been, what they've done, and they'll start crying, and I always check the room, because what happens is you always got 1 or 2 people that jump up and go looking for tissue, and when they show up, I say, stop. I don't let them give people tissue. And they go, but she crying. Let her cry. She's earned that cry. Let him cry. He's earned that. He's hurting. This is his appropriate expression of his pain. He's grieving something. And people don't understand that. Even people who are addicted to drugs grieve the loss of using drugs.
Absolutely positively. Absolutely positively.
So I don't give tissue. And they say, well, you got snot running out enough. So what? That's their snot. They'll be all right. It's part of cleansing, and I think that's a huge part of it. But what do you think makes grief and loss so difficult to manage?
I think anything that is uncomfortable to us, to the extent that we don't know what we can do, because that's the thing about grief and loss that can be so difficult for people to just not know what to do when you've lost something that particularly has been very close to you, or something that you have depended on, or something that you have responded to, it's the word itself. You feel at a loss.
Wow.
And when you feel at a loss, what happens, Rick? If you have something that's important to you and you lose it, what do you want to do? You want to find it. But in situations when you're dealing with the types of grief and loss that we're talking, you can't just run out and find it again. It may not ever come back. It may not ever come back. You understand what I'm saying? Certainly when we talk about the loss of a life, you're never going to get that person. And I don't care what people say, about being saved and loving God. Saved people grieve.
Thank you.
Saved people mourn. Saved people go through mourning periods that are extremely difficult, and that's extremely understanding. And so I always say to people, don't you try to decide how a person should grieve or how a person should mourn. I'm the first to recommend go out and get some help. And no offense to pastors, I am a pastor. But I don't do any of my congregations' mammograms. I don't do any of their prostrate exams. If you are not equipped with the therapeutic knowledge to assist your congregants, then you need to have somebody on speed dial and make sure they get the appropriate help, because it's extremely important. We split up health, Rick. There's only one health. That's mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. It's all one health. Somehow we've split them up so that people believe that they can address parts of health that they have no background in. And so I believe in spiritual health. But I also believe that when a person is dealing with extensive grief or depression or loss, that you as a pastor have an obligation to say, listen, let me give a friend a call who I know has a background. And you as a pastor do not have a right, no matter what kind of background you have, to do therapy with your congregant, because that's a conflict of interest. And so I don't do therapy with my congregants. They go somewhere else. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Can't say amen, say ouch. You can't say ouch, say boom.
I told y'all. That kind of takes us into my next question. Now, I dealt with 2 back-to-back serious losses. My mom died in September 2009, and then in October of 2011, my wife passed. And what made everything what made it cut a little deeper was that my wife actually passed on the day that we became a couple in high school. So it cut a little deeper. I was still dealing with my mother's loss of my mom, and then my wife suddenly dies. So for me, I got a lot of, when I was expressing how I felt, I would always get a lot of, she's in a better place now. The Lord, she's in the Lord's hands. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And I was looking at people that didn't lost their mind. I told one person, I said, first of all, the better place is with me.
My God.
Okay, it's with me. And that applied to both of them. I wanted both of them. They were the women in my life. And, then you get, Rick, you're the man of God. You got to be strong. No, I don't. This is what I'm feeling. You can't keep crying. And I found myself going back and forth with individuals using scripture to pretty much support my position. But I was like, you know what? This is crazy. So being a pastor, do you think that Christians often use, or people, that ain't got to be a Christian, make efforts to use biblical text in order to avoid dealing with grief?
Absolutely, positively. And that in the therapeutic realm, we use the term called defense mechanisms. And guess what? In the body of Christ, sometimes we use a scripture as a defense mechanism, because we don't know what else to say. So we look it up, right? And we say it, and we don't even know if we honestly subscribe to it, right? We say it. We talk about Jesus. You talk about Jesus in Scripture. Jesus said, Lord, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? The humanness inside of him was not prepared to deal with the pain.
Right.
But the spirit inside of him said, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. Jesus did not want to be a martyr contrary to popular belief.
Oh.
You understand? But you got folk running around like, I want to be a martyr. Jesus didn't want to be a martyr. He was like, if you can you take this from me?
Right.
And so we all he was going through his own grieving on the cross.
Exactly.
But he had the capacity in the place of his grieving to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Because he understood where he was. Yes, people use scriptures all the time. I think scriptures a lot of time are a defense mechanism, because what's the easiest thing to do? Find something in the Bible, because what? I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to say. So we'll understand it better by and by. Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. Yeah, those are all true.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But sometimes they're not appropriate.
Exactly.
In the moment.
Exactly.
And in the time frame. Everyone has a right to feel their pain. Just as you said, when you're in the rooms with people and they're dealing with addictions, they have a right to feel their pain and own where they are.
Right.
And people grieve differently. And you made such a good point when you say people grieve the drug. That's been my lifestyle. That's been my bed partner.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So people don't understand in all of these processes, and that's why it's unfortunate when people are going through any type of a therapeutic process, when you don't have family members who understand that process is just that.
Ooh.
It's a process, and that people have to be patient with you, and that people have to try to understand where you are and empathize with you where you are in the place and the space that you're in. Your perception is your reality. Guess what? It may not be the reality, but your perception right then, right there, is your reality. And so we have to learn how to address the people's pain, and not the situation or the circumstance that got them there. See, like we try to look at why this happened, how this happened. No, let's address the pain and try to get to the place where we can help to ease the pain.
Yeah. Wow. For those of you just joining us, we're here with Pastor Jamila Woods, licensed social worker, pastor, singer, teacher, preacher, all of the above, as you can see, and just a good friend of mine as well. My network, God has allowed me to have an extensive network, and this is what this platform is for. You got a couple of comments. Candace Shanique said, this is so true, when we were speaking about the process of dealing with the pain. And you know, folks are tuning in. I want you to like and share the video, share it with everybody, because this is something we all have to deal with, y'all. And we're going to get right back into it. So, okay, let's talk about the kids for a minute, because does it show up differently in kids as it would an adult?
Once again, it is unique to the individual, and it's unique to the loss.
Okay.
Because guess what? A child, and you know, because of the line of work that I've done for many, many years, different children deal with loss in different ways. If that child has been abused and neglected, that loss may not be so painful.
Right.
That loss may come in the form of a relief. Right? If that child has been very connected, then you may see that emotional breakdown. But then you also might see that person who appears to not have any feelings, who appears to be numb. And sometimes when we talk about children, Rick, it's because we don't like to allow children to process their pain. And so we want people to you want to right away to start talking about it. You know, that's why we did things like put art therapy, play therapy in place, because children are always ready to talk about how they feel. And so you should never make a child feel bad about not wanting to talk about a loss, because they're in their mind might be trying to process the whole thing themselves.
Now, I'm glad you said that. So when you talk about art therapy and play therapy, now, would that be appropriate for an adult?
So, you know, they are doing art therapy with adults now.
Okay.
And you know what? It completely escapes me because I wasn't ready for this. He gave me a whole dissertation of questions to look at, y'all, and he ain't mentioned that one. But they actually have this, you've seen them where they have these sheets where they give you the color in.
Yeah.
That is a form of art therapy.
Okay. Coloring books.
For adults. Yeah, you see them now. You'll see them give them to people in hospitals and so on and so forth. And so, you know, See, I was going to say something real wrong. I must be around Rick Davis. But I believe that there has to be a degree of art therapy and play therapy in all of our lives, right?
Okay.
That we all have to find healthy places. See what I'm saying? Healthy places of release. Not the side, what'd you say, the side
piece?
The side piece, that's not a healthy place, a space of relief. But seriously, I think for all of us, that sometimes we can find things that we engage in that will help us to take our minds off of things. Now, that doesn't mean we don't want to address the situations and the circumstances and the pain. But there are things that we can do that will help us, just getting outside and getting fresh air. Just very, very logical things that you can do. Getting outside and getting fresh air, exercising. Those are things that not just help you to feel better, but they literally have an impact on your brain. And they'll help you.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? They will help you to think clearer. They will help you to look at your situation or circumstance differently. But I always say, and I said it earlier and I'll say it again, don't ever, think that it's not necessary to go and to talk to somebody. It's always important to go and talk to somebody if you find yourself in a place, in a space where that grief and that pain takes you to that point of just not feeling like being bothered, not wanting to give up, not feeling that helplessness, feeling that hopelessness. It's always time to talk to somebody.
All right. We are here with Pastor Jamila Woods, and this is it's a rich conversation, but we need to take a quick break, and we shall come back momentarily to finish this conversation up, because we got a lot more to talk about with my good friend. Stay with us, y'all. Like and share the video. We'll be right back.
Veganistic.
It's going to be a veganistic breakfast at Breakfast Mojo, and we're going to give a review at the end of all this. So let's go ahead and see what we have.
Okay, so what we have here is tofu. And so what you do is you get the tofu in a pack, whichever brand you want to get. It's fine. Get firm tofu and then squeeze the water out in the sink. And once you do squeeze all the water out, because tofu really doesn't have a flavor, it's actually soybean. These little they look like little teeny miniature meatballs. They're sausages. These is Gimme Lean. That is the name of it. So I'm putting them in.
It smells great.
And the reason you don't have to put them in is completely up to you. You know, those of you who
it looks like sausage.
It does look like sausage.
And it looks like eggs.
So what we're going to do is we're going to put some peppers and onions in,
wow,
which I already
prepared.
Already cut up. Red onions, yellow, orange, and red peppers. Now for our green.
Look at that. So what is
cilantro.
Cilantro, folks.
Yes.
Look at the cilantro.
It's fresh cilantro.
Look at the pretty color there.
This right here is garlic and herb. So it's not going to be strong though. Now the minced garlic is strong, but this is not.
Oh, some Italian seasoning.
Yes.
Some rosemary. You know, when it's an Italian medley, it's like a melody. You know what I mean?
This is onion and herb.
Onion and herb.
This is lemon pepper.
Lemon peppers.
Lemon pepper.
That's interesting.
I'm making sure that it is going to have a great flavor. Most of the time when people came down with diabetes or any of those diseases, they were in their 70s and 80s. You know, now people are in their 20s and they're being diagnosed. So, you know, you definitely want to eat healthier. I'm not telling you to be a vegan. You know, you don't have to. I am. I've been vegan for 32 years. Yes, I usually put the top on because the steam in it, you know, it helps it to cook long. Now, it doesn't take long to cook.
That looks amazing with this.
Tofu scramble.
Tofu scramble.
Some people say tofu eggs.
It tastes like eggs. I can't say it's not. You can't tell me anything different. I'm gonna give it a breakfast brilliant. Because I almost feel like this is not enough. Like, I need more.
And it's light. It's light, so you can eat more.
It is light. It is light. It's very flavorful. Breakfast Mojo. I'm Comedian Coy. This is Michelle Mangum. And once again, we'll be back with some more. Don't forget to subscribe with some more Breakfast Mojo. So make sure you tune in, huh?
Welcome to WBGR Network, where we are doing some amazing things in the internet media broadcast arena. We would love for you to come visit our state-of-the-art studios and be a part of what we are providing to the world. Contact us today. WBGR Network, where you go, we follow. Call us at 301-429-9247.
And we are back. This is Just Enough, and we're here with Pastor Jamila Woods, and we are working through the process of grief and loss. For those of you who are watching, please like and share the video. Tell your friends, tell your cousins, you know, take your phone outside and put your mask on, take your phone out there and show it to some folk. I want to address a statement that was made in our chat, and it says, depending on the age, we're talking about children, they don't understand that the family member won't be back in living form. You must explain to them that they must keep their memories alive. Is that? How would you navigate that? The person
saying you must explain to
the child that they must keep their memories of the person that's gone.
And you're telling the child to keep the memories alive and not the adult helping to keep the memories alive?
Ooh, say that again.
I am not trying to start anything. I just want to, the person is saying the child has to keep the memories alive. I'm not clear if that listener, if you can just give us a little more clarification of what you're asking. I understand if you're saying you help the child to keep the memories alive, because remember, we're talking about a child. Mm-hmm. And so it's very important for the adult in as healthy a manner as possible to help to keep the good memories of a loved one alive. And there's so many simple ways you can do that. You know, you can do that through portraits. You can do that through talking about the individual, through reminding the child of the good times that you've had together. But to say they must keep the memories alive, I'm not quite clear.
Okay.
I'm understanding what you mean by that. So if you can clarify that question, we'd love to come back and address it.
Okay. You know, and it brought up something. My daughter, Monique, she told me, my grandson, you know, because she has pictures of her mom around, and my grandson asked my daughter, Mommy, do you think Jesus will let Grandma come back for a minute so she can meet us?
Oh.
And when she told me, it crushed me. Wow. And you know, those are the things that will come out of their mouths, and we got to be prepared to be able to handle that. And my daughter takes them to the gravesite on birthdays and special days. She tells them about them all the time. I do the same thing, you know, because they ask, you know, your mom is dead too, you know, and I'm like, yeah. And we have to, you know, we process together, you know. We have to go through that, you know. We have to be prepared. Okay, here we go. It says children, depending on the age, don't understand the loss of a loved one. So I believe she's saying to help them. I believe she's saying what you were saying, to help keep their memories alive, but letting them know who they are and encouraging them to know a little bit more about them. And I don't think we do enough of that anyway, because we need to be able to let our children know the heritage in which they come from.
Absolutely, positive.
Let's talk about the stages of grief, because there are stages.
Okay.
You know, and people think that, you know, they're in a specific order, or you're gonna, you know, you go from you go through this process for 30 days, you go through this process for another 30, 60 days, you go through this process for another 90 days, and then everything's okay within a year. I was told when I was going through my process, a preacher friend told me, he said, take the S off your chest and take them tights off. He said, you are not Superman. This is not going to be better in a year. Leave it, let Rick go through the process. And even knowing that as a counselor and dealing with this, you know, we have to be spoken to too. somebody has to pour into our lives. And I realized where I wasn't doing that. So let's talk a little bit about the stages of grief to give people an idea of what they look like.
So the most popular stage that people are familiar with are the stages of grief that Kubler-Ross came out with, and they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And they basically speak for themselves. Those who have difficulty accepting the loss, right? And then you get to that point of being very angry. People be angry. You got folk that become angry with God. They become angry with other people. You understand what I'm saying? They go through all of these feelings, and then they try to bargain. Like, well, wait a minute. What if you understand what I'm saying? And then you get to the depression, and you get to the acceptance. But I want to say something that you said that is extremely important, and that is these are not linear.
Okay.
And that you may go through denial, you may get to acceptance and go back to denial at some point in your life. These are not unnatural in the process of grief, and that's why it's important to get yourself into a therapeutic milieu, to get yourself into a place or a space where you can actually sit down and reason and think out, right? Where you can have some therapy that will allow you to reason and think out your feelings, to own your feelings. It's okay to do that. It's okay to be in denial. Guess what? It's part of the process. It's part of the pain. It's part of the process, right? It's okay to be angry. It's okay to want to bargain. It's okay to go through depression. It's okay to go through acceptance. What is not okay is to stay there. And so you have to allow yourself to get the help that you need to get to that next place or phase. And again, understand that this is not a linear process. It doesn't happen just like that. You may go from denial and get the bargain and then go back to being angry. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those are the stages that people are most familiar with. And some people now have challenged those stages of grief and loss, but those are the most popular that are taught and talked about when we talk about grief therapy.
Okay. Because what people have come accustomed to, and this is what I'm going to ask you, put a pin right here. This is what I'm going to ask you. Okay, what do you tell the person that, and I'm going to be specific, has lost a spouse for years, watched them go through a terminal illness, cared for them, did everything, and they married for eons pretty much, and that person dies, and they just can't seem to get, to keep moving. They're stuck. Therapy, maybe, not consistently, but, what do you tell somebody that's stuck?
Again, it's based on the individual. One of the greatest things that you can do is try to look at the positive sides of the existence of the relationship that you were in. But when you get that person that's stuck, they're just fixated in that place of grief and they can't move out of it, that's the person that definitely needs to go in and sit down and talk to a therapist. That's my response to that person who's really stuck, because that goes back to what you said. I'm assuming when you say they're stuck, they can't move past that place or that space. They're not moving on in their lives. They're probably not prospering in their careers, or you understand. And then you have the other side of poke that overcompensate, right, and do everything. But that person that's stuck, the answer to your question is it's always good to talk to a professional and get some help. Okay, because it's like when your car locks up, you got to go to a mechanic.
Right.
You got to go to somebody who specializes in what it's going to take. You understand what I'm saying? Some of us just need to get a tune-up.
Right.
Some of us need to have major work done. Right? I mean, that's the reality. And guess what? It's nothing wrong with that, and you shouldn't feel guilty. Because some people tell you, well, you ought to get over it. Well, that was one of the things Freud used to say. His thing was when somebody dies, you just need to do whatever you can real quick to forget about them until his daughter died.
Oh, wow.
And then everything changed.
Wow.
But that was the way he taught it initially.
Wow.
What you should do is just try to forget the person. No, we don't want to try to just forget a person.
Right.
We want to remember, and we want to remember healthily. Because remember what I said, Some people experience loss from a person who was harmful to them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a process that you need to go through also.
Okay.
To bring closure to that pain that you experienced, right?
Right.
From the harmful person.
Right.
Okay? So, and it's really important, Rick, and that's why I try to be very careful about answering a question when you say, what do you say to a person who, because everyone is different.
True.
And everyone's situation and circumstance is different. Some people can't find a good place or space to talk about.
Wow.
And so then you have to deal with them in a whole different way, right? Some people's memories are only of pain.
Okay.
So you have to deal with that. You understand what I'm saying? And so it's very important, and that's why, individual counseling, group therapy, whatever is necessary based on the situation and circumstance, and that's why assessments are important, right? There are even grief assessments that can help you determine the level of grief that a person is going through, okay, and can help you to further direct them into the appropriate counseling mechanism or healing or therapeutic mechanism. And so it's extremely important to know that it really is unique to the individual. It's unique to the individual because different people, as you just said, some people, they're in church and they're in Christ and they really do subscribe to they're in a better place. And some people can really be like, I just bless God, I'm going to miss them, but they're in a better place. Okay, that's good. That's all well and good. But don't you dare the person next to you that doesn't feel that exact same way. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Begin to condemn them because they've been sitting under the same teaching or sitting under the same instruction that you have. We are all different. We deal with our grief. We deal with our loss differently. And we have to be able to understand and acknowledge the person where they are. We have to be able to acknowledge them. We have to be able to validate them where they are, right? And then begin to offer the help that they need to get to that better place.
Wow. What about, I want to talk about men briefly. Because
Well, we only talk about men briefly. I'm going to talk about men a lot.
Oh, Lord,
I'm just kidding. That's a big joke.
I can't wear. What about, okay, a lot of us are still stuck on the men don't cry. Man up, you suck it up, you hold it, you don't cry. Men don't show emotion, men don't, we don't, that's, for lack of better words, that looks make you look weak, less than a man. You're supposed to just take it and keep it moving. When is it okay for a man to cry?
When he's hurt and he's broken and the tears start running down, that's when it's okay for a man to cry. When the pain is real and he's feeling it, I don't know where that mindset came from, that men don't cry. Because men have cried throughout history.
Yeah.
And we've tried to justify and we've tried to come up with all of these reasons that it doesn't make you strong, it doesn't make you a leader, it doesn't make you fearful if you shed tears. What doesn't make you fearful to me, what doesn't make you a leader to me is if you can't express emotions. I don't want a man to love me and he doesn't have emotions. I can't speak for anybody else, but we all, that says something about a person, right?
Yeah.
We want people to have feelings. We want people to be sympathetic. We want people to be emotional. I don't know where that mindset came from and why we have that. Now, I don't want a man that's a crybaby any more than I don't want a woman that's a crybaby, right? That person may need help. See, Rick, he's laughing, y'all. That person may need help, right, if they can't get past the crying, but to me, there's no different than a man from a man or a woman or a child, who cries excessively and can't. But crying is natural, just like eating and sleeping. It's about our feelings, and we should all have feelings.
Okay.
And we should all have things that touch us, and that crying may not be. I'm laughing because I was thinking about a friend whose husband, cries during some of those love movies. Right? Yeah. That's real. Why? How dare us?
Yeah.
Determine what level of capacity of a man someone is because they cry.
Well, I cried during Cooley High first time I saw it. But those who know me know that one thing I'm not ashamed of or afraid of is what I'm feeling. And think what you may. It is what it is. That's you. I'm good. I want to thank you for such a rich conversation. This was truly helpful, not only to myself, but I know to everybody that's watching and that's going to watch. Again, everybody, I want you to like and share the video. Tell somebody about it. This month we have a lot of good things going on. Next week we have a survivor story.
Awesome.
A young lady by the name of Candace Wrights. That's her pen name. That's what folks know her by. But Candace is a breath of fresh air, and she'll be here next week. But what we want to shift to now is we want you to talk a little bit about Gabriel's lyric, your baby, in more ways than one. I love the way you came up with that name. But tell us a little bit about, how it got started, when it got started, and what your vision is, and what's on the horizon for you.
So, Gabriel's Lyric Therapeutic Services is named after my children. My firstborn is Gabriel, and my daughter is Lyric. And for me, what made Gabriel's Lyric, it started from my own trauma. It started from my own experiences of childhood. I grew up in foster care. I was adopted when I was 12, but I experienced things that no one should have had to experience after being taken out of one home to be put in what was supposed to be a better place and a better space.
Wow.
And so, I grew up, unfortunately, with those secrets. What happens in this house stays in this house. I grew up and I experienced and I observed things that should have never been experienced and should have never been observed. And Rick, it had such a profound impact on me. I found myself in a situation where I was constantly looking for love in all of the wrong places and all of the wrong spaces. And I so much wanted to be validated and appreciated. And it's amazing when I listen to Rick talking about, oh, she's so gifted and so talented. I think a big part of my life was spent trying to overcompensate, trying to be good at something, because people didn't seem to appreciate me just being me. And so Gabriel's Lyric came out of my own pain and my own hurt and my own desire to wrap myself and love on my children the way that children should be loved and appreciated. And that didn't come without pain. That didn't come without trauma, because some of my own stuff came into how I started raising my own children, because that's life. And I thank God that for me, I had the opportunity to be put in the places and spaces of people that could help me. And I remember the first time I ever went for therapy. I remember it was so interesting because I was in divinity school, and it was a requirement at Howard University School of Divinity. And I'm like, hey, man, hold up. I'm trying to be a helper to people. I don't need to go to therapy. Can I tell y'all, therapy saved my life?
All right.
Can I say that one more again in case you didn't hear me?
Yeah.
Therapy saved my life.
Say it for the people in the back.
Let me say it for the folk that wasn't hearing too well. Therapy saved my life, and it helped me to realize that I truly do have something to give, and that my experiences can be used to be a blessing to others. And so I believe that all of my life, and really even in all of my employment, all of the work I've ever done in life had to do with people. And so I knew, I don't know when I knew, but I knew that there was going to come a time when I was going to have to give back therapeutically.
Okay.
And so the Lord dropped Gabriel's Lyric in my spirit. The whole concept is to be able to provide holistic therapeutic services. And here's the piece that makes us a little different than other people. It's not just about therapy around trauma and grief and loss and all of the things that we talk about, but it's even therapeutic about understanding who we are as a people.
Whoa.
as African American people, and understanding our history, understanding our places and our spaces, and being able to accept the fact that we were indeed fearfully and wonderfully made, that we were equipped from the beginning in Genesis. Got to come, the pastor side got to come. I ain't trying to preach. But we were equipped in Genesis, first chapter 26 to 28 verse. He made us in his image and in his likeness. Now, when we talk about being made in the image of God, as fine as I am, I don't look like God. Because God is a spirit. And so when being made in his image and in his likeness is being made with some of the power that he invested in me to change the world. And that's what he gave to us. And so many of us need therapy because the generational curses and the things in our lives that have impacted us and allowed us to believe that we are less than who we are. So I don't just do what we call therapeutic stuff. I talk about Black history. That's a part of our process, understanding who we are. We just did a segment not too long ago called The Real State of Blacks in America. Because as a people, we have to know who we are. Right? You can't expect to be a better person, to be your best person, if you don't even know who you are. And then one last thing I want to say. Coming from, again, a spiritual, biblical perspective, the Bible tells us, those of us who read the Bible and subscribe to Christianity, right? The Bible tells us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Well, here's the problem, Rick. So many people don't even love themselves. So many people don't even have the capacity to understand what it means to love themselves. Then how in God's name, or anybody else's name for that matter, do you expect to be able to love someone else? And sometimes we want people to love us, and we don't even understand the us that we want them to love. Wow.
Now that was heavy. That was heavy. That was heavy.
Boom shakalaka.
I want to, I saw somebody joined us, and I wanted to specifically say something to him. One of my high school coaches, a man who I find, or I give part responsibility to, for helping me to become early, teaching me things about myself and encouraging me along the way. That's Coach Maurice Butler. He's written a couple of books.
Hey, Coach Butler.
Really astute gentleman. I appreciate him and Coach Jim Tillerson, who's rest in peace, along with some of the other coaches, Coach George Washington and those guys. They instilled in us a long time ago some basic principles for living and being men. And I just wanted Coach to know that I saw you jump in the chat, and I just wanted to say, hey, I'm going to get you on here too, Coach. But, so what's next on the horizon for Gabriel's Lyric? Are you taking clients?
So, needless to say, because of the pandemic, we are doing everything that we do virtually. I have moved a lot away from doing individual therapy, although I have done some during the pandemic. I've definitely done some grief and loss counseling, and all of that grief and loss has been directly as a result of death. I try to do more teaching right now and seminars, but we do have people who do individual counseling and provide individual counseling services. And so if you're interested, our telephone number is 240-309-9, excuse me, that was not correct. 240-305-9679. That's 240-305-9679. Our website is www.gltsllc.org. Again, that's www.gltsllc.org. We also ask you to check out our Facebook page, Gabriel's Lyric Therapeutic Services. We do a lot of segments. Go look on there to see some of the conversations that we've had. And then I also want to let you know that we have a broadcast that we do every Monday evening at 8 o'clock p.m. called Conversations on Faith and Mental Health. As a pastor, I think it's extremely important that people understand the connection between their faith and mental health. I hate the fact, Rick, that I have talked to this day pastors who do not believe that there's a difference between your faith, spiritual, and your mental health. I have pastors, unfortunately, who still believe that everything that's wrong with a person is demonic. It's spiritual. You understand what I'm saying? It's a demon. And that is the farthest thing from the truth. If you say that, then you'd have to say every physical ailment was a demon, and I guess there's some that believe that too. But the Bible says the people perish for lack of knowledge. Did I go there?
Yep, you did.
On your broadcast?
Don't matter.
Anyway, www.gltsllc.org. Conversations on Faith and Mental Health is held each Monday evening on Jams Rock Radio. That's www.jamzrockradio.com. And you can join us on the chat line. We also Facebook Live it. If you wanted more information, please just reach out to us. You can reach me directly, Jamila, Jamila, at gltsllc.org. Again, that's Jamila, Jamila, at gltsllc.org. Again, call us 240-305-9679. One of the biggest things that we're doing right now is this mental health first aid certification training, Rick, and that's so important because, I remember years ago when I talked about going into mental health, people used to say to me, "You're not gonna make any money doing mental health." Lies. Because guess what? Right now, that's one of the biggest things that are impacting us in this country, in this world, as a matter of fact, are mental health challenges. And so if you've not received mental health first aid certification training, please reach out to us. I do training for both youth and adults. We are doing it virtually. As I said, all of the work that we're doing right now, we're doing virtually. If you have any type of a therapeutic need, please reach out to us. If we're not able to provide that service, we can definitely put you in touch with someone who is able.
Thank you. One of the bases for this show, one of the visions, is to be able to give a platform to services that have integrity, that have some character, and that will be beneficial. People that I know, people that I've worked alongside, people that I know care about the people. Because first and foremost, if you don't care about who you're serving, then I really don't want to have anything to do with you, because that means that you're focused on money. I've always said, and my very first mentor in the counseling field, Ed Flowers, told me, he said, if you do your job, money will find you.
That's right. So
do your job. And that's what I've done. This platform is just for that. We want to provide hope, healing, and help. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. I appreciate it. You can go back to the WBGR Health and Wellness page and look at the video again, share it with somebody. Please, next week we'll be here at the same time. Again, if nobody told you today, I love you. If nobody else does, and there ain't nothing you can do about it, and even if you could, you can't whoop me. So it is what it is. And until next week, I will say to you all, peace, and please wear your mask.
Amen.
You might get a free can of Lysol next week if you tune in. See you later. Let me know that channel.